Good morning. This is Kim Babine. I am Director of VRS Community Partnerships, and we are here today to discuss a number of updates. Our plan for the day is to get information and updates about Employment First Minnesota. That acronym is the letter E1 and then MN for Minnesota, E1MN. And you'll hear that a lot. And just want you to know that it stands for that employment first. You'll hear more about that. You're also going to hear about our brand new E1 PBA. So that's the employment.
Kim, you muted yourself.
Didn't even click anything. How did that happen? Should I start at the beginning of the agenda or just E1MN? Okay. Just staying way away from my clicking. So E1MN and then the E1 PBA overview. So our job placement and retention services at VRS are funded through a performance-based agreement, so PBA, and we have a new PBA for the Employment First initiatives. We will also get some pre-ETS updates, the pre-employment transition services, and we have some more community partnerships updates for you generally. There will be time for question and answer at the end. We might not get through all of them, but we will put out the questions and answers that we receive after the meeting if we're not able to get to all of them. So I would like to pass it to Chris McVeigh. She's going to give us some opening remarks as well.
Good morning, everybody. I'm so glad to be here this morning with all of you. I see we have about 400 people on this meeting today, so very pleased when we have the opportunity to bring together VRS staff and SSB staff, as well as our community partners from around the state. I support a number of the items that we're going to be reviewing today, including the E1MN Memorandum of Understanding with DEED and DHS, as well as the work of pre-ETS, the pre-employment transition services. So I'm just really looking forward to both sharing information with all of you today, as well as responding to questions and any opportunities for discussion. So again, welcome. And with that, I am going to hand it to Amanda Jensen-Stahl, who's going to lead us through the E1MN updates. Amanda?
Great. Thanks, Chris. Hi, good morning, everyone. Amanda Jensen-Stahl. I'm the Manager of Interagency Partnerships and Business Engagement. It's great to see so many of you this morning virtually, of course. I wanted to give a brief update on E1MN. Next slide, please, Sarah. So just a reminder, I know you've all seen this, but the E1MN effort is really that interagency collaboration between DEED, VRS, and SSB, Department of Education, MDE, as well as DHS, the Department of Human Services. And our goal is to work together to deliver a more seamless and timely employment support system. Next slide, Sarah. So I just wanted to really highlight there's a lot happening with E1MN. We just wrapped up our core training. We had 3 sessions. So hopefully many of you had the opportunity to attend. That training was really meant to give all of us, all of our stakeholders across the state, that basic framework and understanding of what E1MN is. Now, if you didn't get a chance to attend, I'm going to point you to some resources here. So the first link here is to the E1MN website, and this is where we're always going to ask you to go because it has all of our information, general content, and all of the materials that we have available right now. That second link takes you right to the trainings and events page. And so this is going to have information on all of our upcoming trainings, registration information, and other info that's helpful. So for example, the core training that we just did, the slides are on that link, as well as we will have the recording up very soon. So if you missed it, you'll be able to watch it. The next link is our coffee chat Q&A form. We've been doing monthly coffee chats, And it's been, the intent has been an informal Q&A, a chance to address questions that are coming up, things that you might be wondering about, things you want clarification on. And we have a form that we're asking all questions get submitted. And it's really been a helpful way to kind of centralize questions. And then it gives the opportunity for DHS and DEED and MDE, we can review the questions and answer them together so that we're consistent and we're providing that joint answer, that communication, so that trying to keep us all on the same page. And then the last link is to the E1MN toolkit. We've been building out resources to support employment and to support this work moving forward. So that's where you can go to directly get at all of the resources and tools that are available. And just know that we still have some that are in the works. So we'll be adding to that over the next few months. Next slide, Sarah. So finally, I just want to end on a plug. The coffee chats. As I mentioned, we've been doing them monthly. The May coffee chat is next Thursday from 9 to 10, and you do need to pre-register through Zoom to get the meeting access. And we're really encouraging people to attend. It's just been we've been getting some really great questions, and it's just an opportunity for us to be able to address those questions. So if you have the chance to attend, I highly encourage you to do that. And then we have another one on June 10th. I just want to end with the final note that we're taking those questions that we're getting, and we've been building out our FAQ. So if you go to the E1MN page, you'll see that that FAQ is growing, and we imagine that it'll keep on growing. So please continue to submit those questions. We really appreciate your thoughts, your comments. It's really helping us think about what training do we need going forward, what other types of communication, what other types of resources do we need to support this work as we move into the summer, the fall, and beyond. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Evie and Sarah to talk about the E1 PBA.
Thank you, Amanda. Welcome, everybody. So today, Evie and I are going to talk about the new E1 PBA and give you a little bit of background on how we got here. Again, you can use that Microsoft form at any time while we're presenting and submit your questions. So our agenda for today is to share the background of the E1 PBA design considerations, to preview the new E1 PBA with you, and discuss the E1 PBA milestones and payment criteria. We're going to share some updates on the general PBA, look at our ongoing work in progress and some of our next steps. And then at the end of the forum, we'll have time for questions and answers. So as a refresher, this is a model you've probably seen. We think this is a great visual reminder of E1MN with the engage, plan, find, and keep, and seeing where the funding changes between VRS and DHS. Today, we're going to focus on the new E1 PBA and how it applies to the find section. So with E1MN, if someone is on one of the 4 qualifying Medicaid waivers, the waiver case manager is now going to be part of the employment plan development. And there'll be conversation with them about a commitment for long-term support funding. So if someone is on one of the 4 qualifying Medicaid waivers and there's long-term funding available, we will start an E1 PBA.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Evie Wold with Vocational Rehab Services. So kind of looking back to how we got here, back in 2014, WIOA and the Center for Medicaid and Medicare Services came out with the final rule. So now DHS and the VR program have common customers. Then in 2018, DHS launched the interim guidance, so that more directly raised the issue of how DHS and DEED's programs work together. Then in 2019, DHS and DEED signed a memorandum of understanding, or an MOU, and this started to really solidify and outline the shared understanding of the federal guidance, set agreements on how the programs work together. And so now we're moving into the Employment First Minnesota, the E1MN. And this really describes our partnership and shared commitment to making the system work for all of the people. So the new E1 PBA that Sarah and I are going to be talking about today flows from this work, and we hope that it will better meet the needs of people coming to us through this partnership with DHS. Some of the considerations, once the decision was made to develop a PBA specifically for the E1MN, the work group started convening. And so we have an advisory committee that we worked under their guidance and started to meet together input. The input that we looked at, we started with looking at other states' models, engaging our VRS staff through team meetings, and really all areas of our staff. We engaged our partners. Sarah and I did some sampling across Minnesota, rural and metro, smaller providers, larger providers, and engaged our community partner committee as well. Workforce One is our case management system, as many of you know. So we're looking at that to see how that can help us to create efficiencies and what our limitations might be with that system. Also, SSB was a great contributor to this model, looking at how they've been working with PBAs and criteria they have helped us, and also a recent RSA audit of some changes that we had to make, we incorporated into this process. Some of the considerations we heard from our community partners and our internal staff that really expect that this process may take longer and be more intensive. A lot of the people coming to us now are people that may not have worked in competitive and integrative employment before. And so this is new. We expect some challenges with that. We expect that we'll probably have a different kind of process, more frequent, more one-to-one assistance. And we really use stakeholder feedback from our general PBA that we've been working with for a long time in building this new framework.
All right, so starting July 1st of this year, VRS will have two models for performance-based outcomes. And to help distinguish the two, we are going to call the PBA that we all know and we've worked with for many years, the general PBA. And this new PBA model we're talking about is the E1 PBA. So here's a very high level overview of how we decide which PBA to use and what they mean. So basically, if a job seeker comes to VR with one of those 4 Medicaid waivers listed, we're going to be using the E1 PBA. So as you all know, our general PBA is $3,800. It has 3 milestones, and it is for the non-Medicaid waiver VR participants. The new E1 PBA is a $5,000 PBA. It has 4 milestones. It's for individuals on one of these Medicaid waivers, the CADI, the brain injury, the community alternative care waiver, or the developmental disabilities waiver. And if you provide general PBAs, you do not have to amend your contract to add an E1 PBA. Our work group knew that the development of the E1 PBA would influence and affect our general PBA. And we tried to align the general PBA and the E1 PBA as closely as possible. So here is the new E1 PBA. Oops, sorry about that. The E1 PBA has milestones 1, 2, and 3 that mirror the general PBA. So milestone 1 is initial placement plan at $1,330. Milestone 2 is first shift of new job completed at $1,200. And milestone 3 is 90 days successfully employed at $1,270. The 4th milestone is called an E1 milestone, and that milestone is paid at 120 days of service for $1,200.
Wow.
Again, the E1 milestone applies only to the E1 PBA. We discussed many options for this E1 payment ranging from 60 to 90 to 180 days. We knew we wanted to give more funding to our partners. And so with consultation, as Evie had said, with multiple stakeholders, it is 120 days of service, and we'll talk more about each milestone and what they mean. So in the alignment of the general PBA and E1 PBA, we want to highlight the milestones, communication, and compatibility that they both have. So as I said, milestones 1, 2, and 3 are the same as the general PBA, and that E1 milestone is only for the E1 PBA. Communication, frequent communication is going to remain key for success. We also want you to know that we heard you and we heard your feedback on the bi-weekly communication updates. So we are making a change in our required communication, and we are moving from the bi-weekly communication updates to a new monthly progress report. This template is going to be created for use by all providers, and Evie will go into more details about that. Finally, compatibility. In our design work, we also looked at service compatibility. And if agreed upon and on the employment plan, providers may combine and layer other services with the E1 PBA and the general PBA, such as job tryouts and job coaching.
All right, so in an attempt to really simplify the two PBAs, we wanted to create alignment where we could. So some of the commonalities that both PBAs have is, of course, we'll have informed choice with the providers for both general and E1. A big new piece is that we will be unbundling the job coaching. So previously we had 20 hours of job coaching bundled into the PBA, and we will now be taking that out and authorizing for it separately. So there'll be layering of services. So job coaching will be layered on top of the PBA, and also when job tryouts are needed, they can be layered. We'll be, as Sarah said, big change is changing from biweekly communication to monthly, and that's for both the general and the E1 PBA. 60-day meetings will continue when a person is in job search. Milestones 1, 2, 3 are the same, so there's alignment with that. And then one of the components we saw was a placement plan summary. And this was a requirement that the provider summarize the placement plan meeting and send it to Voc Rehab Services. We found that this wasn't widely enacted across the state. So we decided just to take that piece out of a requirement for our partners and just have our vocational rehab staff complete the summary after the placement plan meeting. So what is new with the E1 PBA? Of course, the introduction of a waiver case manager as a team member. They'll now be part of that placement team. The extra milestone, the E1 milestone. And as I said, that we really expect that this process will be more individualized and intensive. Some of the benefits of the new E1 framework. We heard from our partners that they expect the job search will take longer, and there will be that infusion of financial support, that E1 milestone at 120 days of service. It ensures that those 60-day meetings occur. We know they largely do occur, and we want to support that in this process. At those meetings, decisions can be made. Since people will be new to the world of work in a lot of cases, they may be getting their eyes open to what this process looks like and can make better informed decisions with their team. It also ensures that those first 4 months of progress reports are submitted, and also guidance on what's needed to receive that milestone payment. As Sarah said, we're doing away with the biweekly communication updates when this starts, and moving to a monthly progress report. We heard from our internal staff and partners that this was preferred. We're going to be requiring that these are submitted every month until the case is closed. In the form, it will look a lot like the communication update, where it will have different sections. There'll be a section kind of summarizing job search. There'll be a section summarizing employment details when someone finds a job, and there'll be a section on closure in that form. So it can be used for multiple steps along the process. We're going to ask that everyone uses the same form. Both our partners and our internal VRS staff, we feel like if the form is uniform and consistent, you'll know exactly what we need, especially those employment verification details. There won't be any sending back of, completed forms because of lack of information. So we really feel like that will be a big help for both our staff and our partners. We want those submitted by the 10th of the following month. And really, communication is key. We don't want this to be the form of communication between the team members. We want this to be a monthly summary of the activities that happened and communication by phone, virtually, email, however it's done, in person someday, hopefully. That's key. That needs to happen as it always has.
Some of the questions we've had is about informed choice. So we just wanted to make sure we addressed that and talking about who can provide placement services with the new E1 PBA. Informed choice applies to both PBAs. Nothing is changing in that piece. So informed choice, engages our VR participants in the process of choosing which community partner they feel best meets their service needs. All VR participants go through the same informed choice process, whether they have a Medicaid waiver or a Medicaid case manager or not. The VR participant may choose internal or external placement services to help them with their job search. And our community partners do not have to be 245D licensed to provide the E1 PBA. We know that we anticipate in many cases, a VR participant will already be connected with a community partner who has worked with them in that engage and plan phase of the E1MN process, and that participant might choose to continue with the same community partner to assist them with the find phase and then continue working with them in the keep phase. In this case, it would be a benefit to be a 245D licensed provider duly enrolled with both DHS and VRS, so the participant could have seamless continuum of services. However, community partners do not have to be 245D licensed, and they can provide an E1 PBA as long as you have a PT contract with us with PBAs on your agreement. Again, we don't know what the participant will choose for their best match, but informed choice will be an important part of the process. So let's just talk a little bit about the milestones, what each of them entail, and what is required for payment. So for milestone 1, it's that initial placement plan at 1330. Like the general PBA, that starts with that initial plan meeting with all the team members. Minimally, that would be the referring counselor, the placement provider, the job seeker, and now the waiver case manager needs to be a part of this meeting. All parties come prepared to create the placement plan. The completion of the placement plan includes all the roles and responsibilities that each team member will be accountable for. And as Evie said, we tried to address some of our pain points, and we are eliminating that placement plan summary requirement from our partners. For milestone 1 payment, the provider sends the placement plan and an invoice. Very similar in what you are used to with the general PBA. The E1 milestone is the new milestone, and this milestone is paid at 120 days of service. So this means that it could be paid during active job search. So while a person is still in job placement services at 120 days, or it could be paid if someone is working and they're in follow-up services. For the E1 payment, we would want 4 months of progress reports submitted, a record of the 60-day meetings when in active job search, and an invoice from the provider. So as we said, we explored a variety of timelines for this E1 payment, and we came to 100 days of service after conversations with internal and external work groups. The milestone 2 is again familiar to people who worked with PBAs. It's that first shift of new job completed. So now we would want the monthly progress report with the details on the accepted job offer. And the counselor would notify the waiver case manager when the job is secured to put those long-term funding supports in place. For payment, the provider would have submitted all monthly progress reports since the last milestone was paid and their invoice. And finally, milestone 3 is 90 days successfully employed at 1270. Milestone 3 is like our general PBA. So again, we would have the monthly progress report with details on the accepted job offer and the employment verification at closure completed on our form. The counselor would notify the waiver case manager when the person has been working for 90 days. And the provider would submit a monthly progress report since the last milestone was paid and an invoice.
So let's walk through a couple scenarios of what the whole process would look like. The first scenario, you can see the milestone sequence 1, then the 120 days of service E1. That means that they're getting that milestone during the job search, and then 2 and 3 happen in that order. So Sam starts job placement, has his initial placement plan meeting on February 1st. The partner then would submit the placement plan and an invoice for that first milestone. He continues in job search, has a 60-day meeting, and everyone agrees that this is working. So we're going to keep going with the job search, and we're getting those monthly progress reports each month. Then he continues in his job search and reaches that 120 days of service mark. The partner then ensures that the progress reports have been submitted and invoices for that E1 120 days of service milestone. Then Sam finds a job and works his first shift in August. The partner then submits that monthly progress report with the section on the details on accepted job offer completed and invoice for milestone 2. He successfully maintains and happy with his job. So then the partner submits that progress report with the closure information and an invoice for milestone 3. The second scenario will be when the E1 milestone happens while the person is working. So as Sarah said, that milestone payment can be paid either during job search or when a person's working. So Dylan starts job placement, initial placement plan, February 1st. So we would get that placement plan and the invoice. For milestone 1, Dylan accepts a job and works his first shift. So he gets a job pretty quickly. The partner submits the progress report with the job information and the invoice for milestone 2. Dylan still working, doing well, and in service at 120 days. We don't meet because Dylan's working. So then we would get that progress report and an invoice for the E1 milestone. And Dylan is doing well in his job, and on June 15th hits that 90 days. So the partner submits the progress report with the closure information and an invoice for milestone 3. All right, so we have a lot on our to-do list, as you can imagine. We're working on finalizing the monthly progress report. We are sending it out to some partners and our VRS staff to look at it, make sure that it's meeting your requirements as providers and VRS requirements. We're looking at our placement plan now that we have the waiver case manager as a team member, how they'll be incorporated into that plan with roles and responsibilities. We're updating some other forms that we used for the process, like invitation to placement. Lots of training coming up, so stay tuned for that. We're going to be looking at, since we are authorizing separately for job coaching, we really want to have some more clarity on what is job coaching as opposed to what is just general follow-up services that happen in a PBA. So we need to define that a little more clearly. And of course, we're going to be looking at the data that comes from this E1 PBA to help us to maybe refine the process in the future and make decisions about that.
So as Evie said we have a lot left to do, but the next steps, more training to come from VR on the E1 PBA and the general PBA changes. Again, just a reminder, we're going to move on to Alyssa, but you can continue to submit questions to our partner form question. And then I also put in the link again, the coffee chat form for questions that you might have as well. Thank you.
All right, it's my turn. Hello, everybody. This is Alyssa Klein, the VRS Transition and Pre-Employment Transition Services Specialist. Nice to be with you all. I got to get my screen sharing going here, so just give me a second. And Sarah Sundin, I see you on my screen. Is it showing my great. And I'm gonna have to do some exiting in and out. So maybe Sarah, you can be my go-to to let me know if something's not showing up. So, all right. So we're gonna review some pre-ETS authorizing, invoicing, and reporting process updates first. As many of you recall, on March 26th, a message went out to both VRS staff and community partners that noted that service prep and travel time need to be indicated on the authorization. We heard from many of you about concerns with that. And so starting today, I'm happy to say, we're making some changes to this protocol. An email went out to VRS staff yesterday from Chris McVeigh, or maybe 2 days ago. Anyway, this week. And also a message went out through our community partners listserv from Kim Babine that also describes all of this. So you can review those messages as well, but I'm going to walk you through the updated protocol in the following slides. So first of all, this part really isn't new. We've always talked about when VRS and our community partners are working together, that communication is key. But just wanted to reemphasize that prior to any pre-ETS authorization, there needs to be a discussion. Which pre-ETS services does the student need? And then whether or how much service time, travel time, and or prep time is needed. So there needs to be that discussion and and for those parties to come to an agreement on what that authorization should look like. But now, instead of including that agreement on the authorization, because that was the difficult part, we're asking that our pre-ETS representatives and counselors case note the agreed upon service, travel, and prep time that is included on the hours on the authorization. Obviously, it would be a best practice for our community partners to have a way of documenting that as well, so that you just know what's included in that time. So here's an example to help staff out. I would actually recommend that you have standalone case note and that you have maybe a standard subject line so you can find those case notes. We're going to be looking into a case note category so that staff could find them in Workforce One more easily, but that will take some time because we have to put in a request into Workforce One. But here's an example for that case note. After Wally's first meeting today, John Cole, who's the provider staff, and I agreed that the authorization will have a total of 8 hours pre-ETS job exploration counseling to include 5 hours service time, 2 hours prep time, and 3 hours travel time, and 8 hours pre-ETS post-secondary education counseling to also include 5 hours service time, 2 hours prep time, and 3 hours travel time. But just very clear what is included in that authorization. Now, the authorization detail can revert back to previous requirements, which means that travel and prep time for pre-ETS no longer need to be indicated on the authorization. Saying that differently, the total hours authorized for each pre-ETS service type and title will all be all that is needed without calling out how much is to be allocated to service, travel, and prep. So now I'm going to share, I'm going to exit out of this PowerPoint. I'm just going to show you an authorization real quick. It's very simple, but it's thank you, Sarah. It is linked on the slide, and I'll also show you where this is saved on our website in a little while. So here's an example of an authorization. For today's purposes, we are using a fictitious participant named Wally World. So this is Wally World's authorization. And just as we discussed in that case note, Priyat's job exploration counseling, that's all that needs to be listed for the type and the title. He has 8 hours authorized, and then we have the total. As well as Priyat's post-secondary education counseling, same thing. So making it more simple. Okay, now I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint. Thank you, Sarah. All right, so let's talk about the report, because this is where the detail needs to be. So the report must include clear detail on the amount of time spent delivering those 3 items. So when we talk about Priyat services, it's including the detail on what occurred during that time. For travel, it needs to include the address of the start and destination points. And then for prep time, it needs to include the detail on what occurred during that time as well. So you want to indicate services, travel, and prep on that report and what happened. So I also have a report example to show you. So I'm going to again exit out here. Oh, flip to my other screen. Just give me a moment. See if it lets me move it. All right, see it? Thank you, Sarah. Okay, so here is a sample report for Wally World. You know, it's nice when everything can be summarized in some way at the top. So you'll see on this report that Priyat's job exploration counseling, there's 3.5 hours used. And for post-secondary education counseling, there's 7.25 hours used. And then we go into each date of service and what happened. How we have it on this report, which is really nice, is just we say how much of the Priyat's job exploration counseling and how much of post-secondary education counseling happened. In this first meeting, there wasn't any prep or travel, so that's why it's not indicated. But as you go into the other service dates, you'll see where travel and or prep do come into play. Actually, I'm gonna go to this date of service here. It's the best example. So on June 16th, there was 3 hours of post-secondary education counseling that is going to be billed for, and that was provided. But within that, there was 30 minutes of prep, 1 hour of travel, and 1.5 hours of service time. And then when you go into that case note or into that entry, we have prep time listed, and it says exactly what happened during that prep time. We have the travel time listed and exactly, you know, where the starting point and the destination point was. And then we have the service time. Also, as a nice best practice is getting student feedback, because knowing what the student thought about that session and where they're at in their planning. So we have a full report here. It's again linked on the slide, and I'll show you where you can find it on our website. So it's one report. Okay, now I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint again. Thank you. Invoices. So information included on the community partner invoice only needs to include the total number of hours billed for each Priyat service type and title. So you do not need to indicate how much of that time was spent on service, travel, and prep. So we'll look at a sample invoice. Okay, so here is the sample invoice that goes along with the report I just saw or just shared with you for Wally World. And you'll see it's pretty simple. So you can have a range of dates. And then it lists what was the service type and title, which was job exploration counseling. Again, the total number was 3.5 hours in the total. Same thing with post-secondary education counseling. So you only need to have that service type and title. Of course, in pre-ETs like job exploration counseling, the type and title are the same. And then we have the total. So it's very simple. All right. Couple questions that have come up. So what if, as a community partner, I realize that the amount of service prep or travel time needs to change? So even though you have those 8 hours or whatever the amount is, and you've decided together that it was the 5 hours of service and 2 hours of prep, but now you're realizing, and maybe 2 hours of travel, maybe you're going to end up just needing more service time. You don't need all that prep time. As the answer says here, communication is key. All you need to do is contact the VRS staff person, the pre-ETS representative or the counselor, so that they can case note that change. If more total hours are needed, so you don't have enough hours on the authorization, you and that VRS staff person can discuss whether another authorization can be done. Another question is the maximum prep time still at 50%? And the answer to that is yes. So the maximum amount of prep time for pre-ETS services that can be authorized and billed is 50% of the service time. As many of you might be utilizing at this time, we have a pre-ETS authorizing, reporting, and invoicing guide. It is linked here, but it needs to be updated still. Right now it says April of 2021. You'll know that it's been updated when it says May of 2021 on the bottom. So I'm working on getting that done and onto our website. In a moment, I'll show you where that is on the website, but it is also linked here. It will have the same link, but it will just be updated. So I just wanted you to be aware that what I've shared with you today is not yet reflected in that guide. Okay, so be sure you put your questions in the link that was shared with you, and we can answer any questions about any of that later in this presentation. I'm now gonna switch gears a little bit and just share some resources that I think could be helpful to many of you. The first is related back to E1MN. And as you know, E1MN is all about our services between Department of Human Services, Department of Education, and DEED, our 3 agencies. And it's about both adults, and a lot of the work and what you're learning about really pertains to adults, that side of E1MN. But it also pertains to youth, and particularly when we're talking about when they're in high school and thinking about transitioning. So what we have right now is a new listserv, and I want to encourage everyone to make sure that you're registered for this listserv. So you can click on the slide to register, and maybe we can get that into the chat. It's a real easy registration. You just put in your email address, because we're going to be continually sending out updated kind of system level announcements. For instance, we did send out a message this week that announced that DEED VRS is able to fund for special educators to get their work-based learning licensure endorsement. It's a pretty cool deal. We're hoping we will see more work coordinators in our transition system across the state. So we're investing some of our pre-ETS funding into the education of our special educators. So we don't send tons of emails out, just pertinent updates. So I really, really encourage that you get on that listserv. And as I mentioned earlier, I was going to show you where some things are on our DEED VRS website. So I'm going to now go there and exit out of the PowerPoint again. Whoops. So hopefully all of you have this page. Thank you, Sarah. This page bookmarked. We will continually be adding resources and things that as they come forward. So for instance, I'm going to click here on the resources tab. And actually, if somebody could also put the link to this web page in case people don't have the slides, some that you have it. But there's a resources tab. And So from what I shared today, I mentioned that we're going to be updating the pre-ETS authorizing, reporting, and invoicing guide. As you can see, it says April of 2021. So as soon as we update it, it will say May of 2021. So that's where that is located. And then other things that I shared today, we have this Wally World authorization. We also have the Wally World sample report and the Wally World sample invoice. We also have other sample reports and invoices on here. I have not updated them yet to reflect prep and travel. So just so you know, right now, it just that Wally World shows you the examples that include prep and travel embedded into the report and invoice. Or actually, it's just the report because you don't need to have those things on the invoice, right? Okay, and then I also wanted to show you, shout out to Stacy Mason. She is a new pre-ETS representative out of our Fairmont team down south. She comes from a provider agency, and she had put together this pre-ETS tracker for our providers to look at as a sample or something that you might use. I'm just going to pull it up really quick here. So it's just a way to track your pre-ETS hours. It's again, a spreadsheet, and she has on the bottom different students. Of course, these are fictitious names on the bottom, but you can include your actual students, and just a way to be tracking your pre-ETS authorizations and the time used. So just a resource that might be helpful to some of you. And then I wanted to say that, okay, we have recorded trainings. In November, we recorded a series of 5 modules for any of our providers that gives you an overview of pre-employment transition services. We have all the recordings and PowerPoint slides. But what's new on here is a training that was recently provided regarding registered apprenticeship. You know, that's a really interesting topic to many people. So we have the recording and the PowerPoint, as well as some other handouts that might be useful to you. I know we at VRS are very interested to dig into apprenticeship more. We're partnering with the Department of Labor and Industry to look at how we can help more people that we serve, where it's appropriate, be able to enter into apprenticeship. So I think that was all I was going to show right now on here. I'm going to go back real quick to the PowerPoint. So I have 3 other things on here that I have linked. One is called Transition Tennessee course, and I'm going to show you that on the web. LinkedIn skills for in-demand jobs and grow your career with Google are 3 other resources I just wanted you all to be aware of. So Transition Tennessee is a website we're really taking a good look at. They have tons of resources. Of course, it's for the state of Tennessee, but it is a partnership between their state agencies, providing lots of pre-ETS resources. So I encourage you just to look around their site. They have curriculum and things like that. But one thing they offered to their provider community was the strategies for effective instruction, basically related to pre-employment transition services. And there's an introduction to the course. I'm going to just show you how you can scroll down. There are 4 courses on there. The first one is called Collaborating with Teachers. The second is Choosing a Curriculum. The third is Connecting with Students and Managing Learning Environments. And the 4th is Virtual Instruction. I personally haven't watched these, but I think that just knowing the topics, I thought this might be very helpful to many of our providers who are new with pre-ETS and might be helpful resources for you. Almost done. I learned recently that both LinkedIn and Google are doing a lot more in relation to career development, thinking about youth and adults. And so the LinkedIn page that I have on the slide deck brings you to this page. It says learn relevant skills for jobs in demand. So at the top, they actually have online free learning for top 10 careers that they've identified. Now that is not pre-ETS, technical skills training and working towards a credential isn't pre-ETS, but obviously pre-ETS is about leading towards that. So, but this is obviously still helpful in many ways. But then you go to the bottom and they also have some soft skills curriculum. So mastering soft skills is one, and then they also have job search best practices. So just want you to be aware of those. And last but not least, I'm going to put this link in the chat as soon as I'm done, because I realized I put the wrong link in the slide deck. But this is this Grow with Google site, and they also have free online learning, but they also have different coursework related to soft skills, the workplace readiness skills on this page too. So, so improve your resume, you know, different tools and things like that. So I think that's it. I think my last slide just has my contact information, but definitely put questions in the link that you were given earlier. And I think I'm done. I'm going to hand it over to Kim. Thanks, everyone.
Hello, everyone. Actually, Alyssa, would you keep sharing your screen for a couple slides? I just have so few, and then we won't have to have. Does that work? Or Sarah, can you share? Awesome. Okay, so first slide is on the next slide. Wanted to make a few announcements about our community partnerships team. So our community partnerships team is the folks that both our partners, our VRS partners and potential partners, but also staff. They are your liaisons for all things vocational rehabilitation, especially when it comes to PT contracts and contracted services and billing or invoicing, or like, how does this referral work with this partner? Those are things that our community partnership specialists can help with. You may be familiar with Ann Paulson and Sarah Sundin. They've been doing the work supporting the VR program for up until now. Brad Westerland works with some of our grant programs, and Claire Courtney works with our grant programs and behavioral health. So we have added 2 new staff people to the folks who are supporting the VR program, and we are thrilled. We knew that we needed more people power to best support all of you. So I'm thrilled to announce that Janine Oyen and Jess Althwaite are the new members of our team. Janine was most recently a VR tech in the Brooklyn Park office and has experience working in the state of Oregon in the VR program. Jess was most recently a VR counselor in the St. Cloud office and also has previous experience working for one of our community partners. So the way that we break up the work when it comes to the VR program is we want you all to have a go-to contact for the questions for partners about your contract, and for staff about questions with the community partners. So when it was just Ann and Sarah, we split the community partners into 2 portfolios. Ann generally has the north, Sarah generally has the south, and they split the metro. So right now we don't want to upset the apple cart. So instead of splitting into 4 portfolios, we're having Janine join with Sarah in supporting that portfolio of community partners, and Jess is joining and teaming with Ann Paulson in supporting Ann's portfolio of providers. And so if you need anything, you can contact any one of us and we can get you to the right person, or you can see the contact information on that slide. So I wanted you to know who to go to. All right, on the next slide, we have a couple services updates. So for our contracted services. And the first one is about transportation reimbursement. So about this time last year, we started working on and then rolled out in July a new service on our PT contracts called the transportation reimbursement. And we knew just with any new service or a changed or updated service that we can do as much prep as you want and look at it from as many angles, but once it's live and in the field, it works a little differently. So we knew that we were going to be reviewing it and seeing how it was working and making adjustments as we go. So that was planned. We know to expect that. And then, so here we are. We've done that and we have some updates. So we learned that actually that the transportation reimbursement really is two services that need to be separated out for clarity. So the first the change will be when a community partner is transporting an individual. And the other one will be when a community partner is traveling to or from the individual. Those will be separate and distinct service titles, and they will be separate and distinct on partner contracts. And they'll be separate and distinct in Workforce One. So VRS staff, when you're authorizing, it'll be a different authorization. That, traveling to and from and whether or not you're transporting has been where a lot of the confusion has come. And so we're just going to split them and have it be really clear. Both will be reimbursed at $28 an hour. I did send an email about that yesterday. It's getting posted on the web, and we'll send out the link once it's all posted on the web, and we can share that with you. But that is happening now. You will need to amend your contract as a community partner to split those out into two. And so get in touch with Anne, Sarah, Jess, and Janine, and they will help help you and will amend your contract accordingly. So they can just get in touch with them and they'll walk you through it. The next one is about what was previously referred to as driver's training. So we're on the next slide, Alyssa. Thank you for doing this. So there was some confusion around driver's permit training, exactly what that means and what we're authorizing for and how it's reimbursed. So we are changing driver's permit training to a new service title that's called driver's permit / license preparation and training as an accommodation. That as an accommodation is important because it plays into how the consumer financial protection. I think I'm in a agency mode. Consumer financial participation is applied. So that's CFP. So I know some of you have already amended. We've reached out to a few of you to get amendments rolling. Some of you have already done that. And if you have driver's training on your contract right now, get in touch with Anne and Sarah and Jess and Janine. They will help you with those amendments. And again, I have some additional information to send to VRS staff about the mechanics of what to do in the meantime as providers change their contracts. So this is the information. We're starting now, and I've got a few more details I'll be able to share with you in the coming days. And then lastly, I want to welcome any partners, organizations that are thinking of becoming a VRS community partner and are a potential community partner. We will have an application process. We always have an application to become a VR partner, and that application is being updated and we're changing our process. That will be live soon. The application will be posted on our community partners webpage, and we will send an announcement through our Gov Delivery email list. And so I think if you've registered for today, you'll be signed up on that email list. If you have other folks that you want to, on your staff or others that you think would be interested in these announcements, they can contact Carla Eckhoff and she will add you to the list. Her email's on the slide. Okay, that is all I had for the community partner updates. We're now going to move to the discussion portion, questions and answers. So I am going to pull these up. Let's see. There were some questions I'm thinking from VRS staff, wanting to clarify how authorizations will work. So what will happen when on July 1st, will there be, if someone's in a general PBA now on a waiver, what happens if they are on a waiver and then need to have an E1 PBA? Or if someone is in a general PBA and gets a waiver while in that general PBA. And so that all comes down to the authorizing pieces and we have some ideas about that and are fine tuning it with the policy team and the FASs and others to make sure that we can get specific information. So more information to come on that. Okay. I will go to Chris on this one. So does the vendor or community partner need to have a 245D? Is that a requirement to have an E1 PBA?
Hi, everybody. Yes, actually, that is the case. In order for an E1 PBA to be authorized, the person being served needs to be on a waiver. And secondly, the provider needs to be both 245D licensed and a community PT contract holder with deed VRS or deed, sorry. The issue is that, you know, the whole focus of the E1MN memorandum of understanding and the work that's gone on is to create a way for the person to access the services that they need in each of the areas that's been described, which is the engage, plan, find, keep. And if that provider, the placement provider, is only a PT contract holder, they can't also provide any of the other services. Our goal is that the person has an opportunity to provide, you know, give that informed choice about who they select, but that the services would flow throughout that entire framework of service. So yes, in the case of E1 PBA, we need the person to be on a waiver, one of the four Medicaid waivers, and then also for that provider to be 245D licensed. Thanks.
All right. So the next question I am going to go to, let's go to Evie and Sarah. So there's a few questions about the to-do list, things that are still in process. So just giving folks a sense of the timeline. Folks are wondering, when will the information around the 90-day in employment clock start and end for the PBA? So really, you know, in the past, we've used that stabilization term. So when will that be clarified?
So we are working hard on that right now. I know that there's been some ambiguity about when that clock starts. So we want to define that a little better. So watch for guidance coming on that soon. And I just want to clarify, Chris, about the 245D.
Yep. I just got an
message.
email from Amanda
Okay.
Jensen-Stahl. Please forgive the error. The only criteria for the E1 PBA is that the person be on a waiver. The provider can be a PT contractor holder only and not 245D licensed. So again, my apologies. The provider can be PT contract holder with deed and not have to be 245D licensed. I think I would say that it's best practice, but it's not a requirement. I'm so sorry.
So if Evie, do you want to follow up in terms of best practice? Do you want to follow up and kind of share a little, I think, or Evie or Sarah on that informed choice? So the question being, if I'm a VR partner, do I have to get a 245D license? And the answer is no. And then there's but it may be of interest to you because, so Evie or Sarah, do you kind of want to explain that piece?
Sure, I'll start, and Sarah, if you want to come along. So we expect that with the E1 PBA, a lot of the waiver participants will have come to us through the plan and engage pieces. So they'll have made the decision to work and They'll have been exploring work and getting together some of their toolkits. So they'll be working on kind of the resume, kind of those pieces. They'll be familiar with the provider that they're working with. Then they'll come to us for the find. When they choose the provider that they want to work with in the E1 PBA, we expect that most people will want to go with the provider they worked with through those other phases, if they're available for that. So, and then when they leave us, after their employment's successful and we've gone through that period of 90 days, they'll be leaving us and likely having those long-term supports and staying with that provider most likely. So that would be kind of an example of a seamless process of keeping the same provider through all those stages through E1. But we may have providers that are full, or for some reason, they're not able to provide services, or the job seeker may decide, I worked with, Evie in the past and I'd like to work with her again. So they have that choice of who they want to work with at any step of the process.
Yeah, and this is Sarah. I would just add that the intent of having our partners have both 245D licensure and have a PT contract with VR is so that the job seeker has the most seamless service as possible, with the funding changing behind the scenes. But the job seeker has continuous service and supports. Kim, back to one of your other questions, just sort of about timing and transition and our big to-do list. We know that we have quite a few things that we are working on. We have some work groups, internal work groups, and we'll be reaching out to some of our community partners for some feedback. But our goal, our target goal, is that for sure on July 1st, the E1 PBA is going to launch. And our goal is the things that we're changing with the general PBA will launch in sync with that. Right now, what we'll be doing is we are getting all the behind the scene pieces together, like the clarity and job coaching and job follow-up, and talking about the 90-day clock and stability and things like that. So our goal is to get everything launched and aligned together, and then more training will be coming.
All right, next one, I think we'll go to Amanda, or someone else can jump in. So since not all clients are the same and can have very different needs, will VRS be required to use an E1 PBA as opposed to the general PBA if a client has one of the 4 waivers? So in other words, can the general PBA be used if it seems like it might be more appropriate? Amanda, do you want to start with that one, or Chris?
Yeah, this is Amanda. Hi, everyone. So, as part of distinguishing the 2 PBAs, we wanted to make it very clear when you would use the E1 PBA versus the general. And so for the E1 PBA, it really is for individuals who have a waiver. And so that really is the delineation. And so we wouldn't want we don't want our counselors having to make that determination. It's just either you have a waiver, therefore it's the E1 PBA. For all other individuals, it's the general PBA. So that would be the response to that question.
Thanks, Amanda. Okay, so I'm going to ask these questions, even though the answer is the same, just so you can hear again that we're working on these. So Sarah and Evie, when is the unbundling of job coaching happening for both general PBAs? And when are those changes happening to the general PBA, the elimination of the placement plan summary, some monthly progress reports? When will that be happening for general?
Our plan is to change the general PBA and those details on July 1st.
Yep. So another question is, do you have to provide extended employment to accept an E1 PBA? So that's, I think, from the provider perspective. And no, extended employment is a separate piece over here. And any partner that asks to put, has PBA on their contract and then is willing to do the E1 PBA, any partner can do that. And so EE doesn't play into it. Any of our partners, 150 of you, will be able to provide that.
If
All
I could just
right.
add to Kim on that question, you know, extended employment, I think it's helpful to just clarify that that's not available for individuals who have a waiver. And so for individuals that have a waiver, the waiver is there to pay for those support services. And so, you know, just kind of remembering that extended employment is really available for all those individuals who may not have that funding source. And for individuals that have a waiver, the waiver employment supports are there to pay for any long-term supports that an individual might need.
Yes, thank you, Amanda. This is Kim. So a question to Evie and Sarah. It's a scenario, so I can repeat it if necessary. So back to the scenario. So if Dylan gets a job 2 days after the E1 PBA placement plan meeting, 2 days after the placement plan meeting, will the vendor only get $3,800? Concerns about being a disincentive for placing someone right away due to that E1 payment coming at 120 days.
You know, we went back and forth and around the bend on when that E1 milestone should be engaged. Our provider, or you as our providers, told us that a long job search may happen in the E1 PBA, and cash, you know, infusions of cash would be needed to sustain that. So that's really the intention of that milestone. So there, yes, you're right. If somebody got a job very quickly, and we expect that to be outliers, to be pretty rare, they would not be eligible for that 120 days of service. There may be rare instances where somebody is, you know, starts services and ends services within that window. But it could happen. So that's one of the changes with this PBA.
Excellent. Thanks, Evie. We're going to switch gears. Feel free to continue sending in questions around the E1 PBA. I'm going to switch and ask some pre-ETS questions. So this came from VRS staff. The example case note was confusing. So what case note category should we use in the meantime, and how do we make sure we understand those case notes?
Hey, everybody. I apologize. I realized I made a mistake on the case note with the hours because I originally had a different amount of hours, and then I didn't add it up all correctly. So I really sincerely apologize. I'm going to share my screen, make sure you get the correct information. But I updated that case note that I had in there. Kim, are you seeing my screen with the?
Yes.
All right, so I just had the hours wrong. They didn't add up. It's at 8 hours of job exploration counseling. Obviously, the amount of service prep and travel need to add up to the 8 hours. And so I changed it. So it's 4, 1, and 3, which adds up to 8. So I apologize for that confusion. But then I'm going to stop sharing now. There was another part to that question. I lost it.
It's about the case note title dropdown. So this is for our VRS and SSB staff. What we are suggesting at this time is to do what works for you in terms of a case note title. It can be something that's relating to the pre-ETS service and what the student needs, or the potentially eligible student needs. But that we have plans and hopes to get something specific in Workforce One with a case note title drop down, so that if there is the need to quickly go back and identify that conversation that the VRS or SSB staff have had with a community partner, that it would be much easier to just go ahead and find that, as opposed to, you know, kind of scroll through all of the, you know, the case notes that generally take place when serving and supporting VRS clients or those potentially eligible pre-ETS students.
Yeah, I know we've been very clear with staff about using the pre-ETS categories when you're arranging for services. If this is a standalone case note category, I mean, it's still up, you would have been arranging for those services. So that's okay if you use those pre-ETS categories if you wish.
All right, we've got a number of variations on that theme. Again, I'm going to ask them just so we make sure that we're hitting everything. So regarding the breakdown of services, service, prep, travel. As long as providers do not exceed the total hours authorized, or if more or less time is used for like travel or prep, is that allowed?
So as was noted in the slide deck, communication is key. So it's important that as a provider, if you know you're going to go above one of those categories, it's going to change around, communicate back with the VRS staff so they know. This whole thing really started with getting reports and invoices without the VRS staff and the partner staff having had the conversation, and the VRS staff saying, wait a minute, we didn't talk about travel. So you just want to make sure that there's that communication and agreement together, and for the VRS staff so that you have a documentation that you have discussed it so you can go back to that.
Thanks, Alyssa. Another variation, this is Kim, another variation on the theme. Is the case note about those pre-ETS services, travel, prep, service, is it an estimation? If a conversation happens between the counselor and the partner and an authorization is created, and then when the partner actually provides the services, they need to make a few adjustments, will that be okay? Or does it have to be re-discussed?
Again, it's that communication. So if you, again, as a provider, you're realizing, you've got 10 hours or 20 hours, whatever it is, in the amount of service prep and travel, you agree it is an estimation, but you want to be discussing if there's going to be a change in that. If you're going to go beyond the number of travel hours that you've discussed, connect with that VRS staff person so they know.
And this is Chris. So in the conversations that we've had in prepping for this, we recognize that there's going to be some things that come up that are unexpected or unforeseen. And it really is that conversation. At the end of the day, the VRS counselor and the pre-ETS representative are the ones that agree, they do, make sure that the authorization gets in place. So we have support folks, the VR techs and all that do that heavy lifting on generating the authorization, but the approval by the VRS counselor or the pre-ETS representative is key. And so if there is a matter where there's an extra hour of travel that was not included, it really needs, that's not something that the community partner should just go ahead and do and then just plan that that's going to get approved. There is absolutely a need to have that level of communication and that it's clear ahead of time. Well, it doesn't need to be included on the authorization. There's no amendment to the authorization that needs to be done. It's really in that reporting, but it's going to tie back to a case note that our VRS staff is going to do. And that will become that, that information that we're going to be able to look back on and say, well, this is what was discussed. Or if there was extra travel hours used, then to see that there was an amendment or an addendum to the case note that said, or another case note that said, actually call from so-and-so today said that the travel is actually 3 hours, not 2 hours. We need our staff to do that so that we have that, just that trail of like what was agreed to. It is about communication, absolutely, and what happens in coordinating those services. We have pre-ETS dollars to spend, so it's not a matter of that, but it is a matter of our staff, our VRS staff, being aware of changes when they are occurring or when there's an adjustment that needs to be made. Thanks.
Thanks, Chris. Again, variation on a theme. If a provider requests an increase in hours for travel a month after additional travel time occurred, so the case note is dated after the travel dates on the invoice, are we okay to pay the invoice or is a purchasing violation required? So the request came after the service occurred.
I'm gonna, Alyssa and I are gonna twin this response. Essentially, when we have gotten guidance from our federal funder as well as our technical assistance center, that there is not the need to be so detailed in the authorization or the invoicing, but it's in the reporting. And that there can be some variability in the amount that the pre-ETS funds go towards the service, but the supporting services, there's some flexibility as well. However, again, it is so important that our VRS staff are not caught surprised by changes that they see in a report. That should not happen. It should not be as a best practice the way that we work together. To get a surprise like that a month later, I'm just not suggesting it for our community partners. There are things that happen, and maybe perhaps you're not realizing that it's 3 hours instead of 2 hours round trip to visit this or to meet with this person. However, that shouldn't be a month later. That should be that day or the next day that communication takes place. Alyssa, do you want to add anything to that?
We don't want purchasing violations, and that's why another reason why, I mean, this isn't a part of the authorization, it's a part of that cooperation and communication. So again, things happen, we want to be flexible, but yet we can't say, oh, we're always going to just allow whatever, because then it defeats the purpose. So that communication is just so crucial.
Thank you. We are getting some feedback. This one it seems like from a community partner that they, in fact, would. So the reason we are doing this, taking it out of the authorization and putting it just in reporting, is to make folks' lives easier. So it simplifies things and it's not as tough to do those authorizations. But this feedback is that by not splitting travel, prep, and service into separate lines on the authorization, that it may make it more difficult for the partners to track. If they're tracking separate things, the service, travel, and prep, this partner is saying that it would be more helpful to have those amounts on those hours on the authorization. So everyone knows what's authorized and requested, and can request additional hours. Is there anything in particular that you'd want to respond to on that, Chris and Alyssa?
Looking to Chris.
I'll let you respond to that, Alyssa. I don't have anything.
I think I can jump in and just
Thank
say,
you.
we are doing, like I said at the beginning, we are doing this because for most of the feedback that we've gotten from partners is that when you have it split out on the authorization into those 3 separate services, kind of locks it in a way. Just doing it on the reporting and having that one line on the invoice should give us a little more flexibility. We just have to know about it. So we just need to be communicating what those hours are. We are willing, again, it's to save people time, to reduce burden. So if after several months go by, we can review, see how it's going. If it's if other partners if there's a lot of people who are saying that this in fact is more confusing for folks, we can always look at things with fresh eyes. But the reaction, the feedback that we got is that splitting out those things on the authorization is overly burdensome. And so this is a step to make things less burdensome while still maintaining our reporting requirements for RSA. Okay, so what do we do? This is from, well, let me rephrase. When are these changes for this pre-ETS authorizing going into effect? Do we start authorizing without itemizing today, or what date? And what about current authorization that specify specific amounts for prep, travel, and service?
Go, Alyssa.
Yes, starting today, starting right away. So if you have an authorization and you have those things listed on there, if something needs to change, you don't need to change the authorization, you can make a case note. I don't know if there's anything else related to that, but
No, and I know this is being recorded, so today is May 6th
Oh,
of
thank you.
2021. So this is the day that this implements in terms of the authorization, invoicing, and reporting.
Great. Again, we've talked about this, but I think I'm wanting to ask these questions separately. So just in case people hear it a little differently. So it might be, again, an answer, Alyssa and Chris, you've given a couple times. So the person asks, just to understand this correctly, the number of hours authorized for travel, prep, and service time for a specific pre-op service can be interchangeable among travel, prep, and service if the community partner request the change and that is approved by the VR counselor or rep and is case noted. Is that
Superstar. Superstar.
superstar?
Perfect.
So you
Exactly.
are understanding it correctly, dear, and question answer. Ask her. All right. Another is, what if service and prep time changes, but is still under the number of hours agreed upon? Can we be flexible within the auth? For example, 3 hours of service, 1.5 hours of prep are authorized, but more time was spent on service and less prep time was actually needed. What should we do?
go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, so what we have said is that the contact with the counselor or the pre-ETS rep regarding that, so that they can make that notation in a case note, quick and easy, nothing, no chapters, nothing like that. But then that is the evidence that, you know, whether it's a VR tech that's approving, they would be reviewing and processing the invoice. And then that reminder for the counselor and the pre-ETS rep, oh, yep, I talked to this person back on this date, there was that change, and then that goes forward. So there is that flexibility. Again, the reminder to VRS counselor or pre-ETS rep regarding that, so that they can make that case note, and then that's fine.
All right. Someone asked a question saying, I thought we needed the specific dates in the invoice, not a range of dates. Can you confirm we can use range of dates in the invoice? The specific dates and details are found in the report. And yes, on the invoice, it can be a range of dates. So that's in our invoicing standards. And so when Alyssa sends out the pre-ETS authorizing information, you'll be able to see that.
One additional piece that I just also thought of, thanks to one of our wonderful VR techs out there, is that we can't add hours to an authorization. So this is about the existing authorization with the existing hours that are already authorized and the flexibility within that existing authorization. So it's not about adding hours. That would require a new authorization. Thank you.
Yes, there's a question about getting a template for invoices and reports to share with new providers. And we have a lot of that information available on our website, especially for the pre-ETS pieces. Alyssa has just a ton of information up there. So that is that. And then maybe actually, let me take a minute here. I am actually going to show you some of our sneak peek things. If you've been on the website, you will see that we have been moving some things around and hopefully putting good information up and making it easier to find. So here is our community partners website. So it's a little clunky URL, but I bookmark it so I can get back there. So so job seekers /disabilities /partners. So here are new fancy graphics. The information about invoicing and reporting and other information can be found in our new community partner guide for the VR program. If you click in here, there's information for our new partners is here in new PT contracts. So that is where they can find the application and other information. When they want to see, if it's a potential partner and they want to see sample reports, then you should hop over to this contracted services box. And here there's in services, that's where we have definitions for all our services and clear service types and titles. We're in the process of getting those up. It's not complete yet. But then we also have our billing, authorizations, invoices, and reports information over here. And this is what you can share with them. We'll be putting, we've got some of the invoices and reports in different parts of our website and need to get them on this new one, but they will be here. So that's that. Stop sharing. Okay, let's see. Another question that do we have to do a new case note each time we update or change the authorization? So I think the distinction between whether the authorization itself is changing or just the understanding of what's in the authorization is a piece there.
You just said it. That's absolutely right. So if the authorization, you have 10 hours authorized for job exploration counseling, if that's not changing, or excuse me, if that changes, the evidence shows in the fact that you did the authorization, but then you always have to show or case note how much time is going to be towards service, prep, and travel. So if you get a communication from the partner, you need to change the amount that's going to be allocated to service, prep, or travel, then you want to case note that.
Yes. There's some good tips that we'll bring back from VRS staff. We'll see what we can do. There's on the case note template, making a case note template, like the Social Security case note template, to make that really clear. Another question is, how would summer referrals work with lack of school staff in buildings in the summer? So I think this is less on the new authorizing information and more and reporting information and more on pre-ets in general.
So how are VRS staff getting referrals, or how are we referring to our providers?
I think maybe it sounds like it's coming from VRS staff.
Yeah, well, it obviously, we've got about a month left, and I understand it's been the year like no other. It's been very difficult to get as much engagement of students as we would like. I would encourage all of our VRS staff to do a final push in these last few weeks. I know our school staff are busy, especially this time of year, but as much as they can help us, just to say, hey, we've got resources, I have the availability to do things with students over the summer. If there's anything you can do to help us get referrals, please help with that. That would be number one. Number two is, I think we got to be really creative, thinking about different ways that we can do outreach to youth in the summer, whether it be through, I always think about mental health clinics or programs. It could be like boys and girls clubs. It can be so many things that are happening out in the community, and being creative about ways we can do some outreach in the community. I see Chris has unmuted herself, so I'll let her jump in too.
Well, I'm just thinking about Governor Walz's announcement that's coming later on this, I think it's at noon. Essentially, I believe telling Minnesotans that we're more or less going to have a normal summer, whatever normal. I'm hoping that includes getting outside and being with people. With that, I would think would come the opening of many businesses that are going to be in desperate need of people, and many of them youth having their first work experience. And so this really is the time for us to do that final push. It's both on the VR end with VRS and SSB end with our pre-ets reps, with our counselors, as well as our community partners and our school staff that we partner with as well. To just really, what can we do to really bring it this summer for students with disabilities that are either eligible or potentially eligible for pre-employment transition services? I know we have the business engagement networks throughout Minnesota that they are robust. That is a great place for community partners and VRS staff to come together. I also think about the Metro Prietz community of practice that is piloting right now, and some wonderful opportunities to engage and partner together. And it's all about those kids getting those work experiences. We've got Prietz dollars we need to spend. And what better way than to help students have their first or second summer work experience that helps to kind of pave their way for the next steps in their employment journey. Thanks.
That's great. Okay, I'm gonna shift over to a few more E1 PBA questions. So Evie and Sarah, we're coming to you. First, I'll say there's a couple questions about customized employment, and those are great questions to also, we'll have Amanda bring them forward, but also any questions around that are really good to put in the coffee chat. There's still some work being done between DHS and SSB and VRS about those pieces. So stay tuned on that. And if you have questions, feel free to put them in that coffee chat. So job coaching and the unbundling of job coaching. Lots of questions about how much job coaching are we going to authorize for? Are we still providing 20 hours and then having county waiver take over with the bundling of job coaching? Will this service get added to the employment plan prior to referral or at intake? So Evie and Sarah.
I'll start a little bit. There will be no set number like there was before. So we had that 20-hour number. It's going to be what that job seeker is going to need. So that's what the job coaching will be authorized for. It will need to be authorized before it's provided, so we don't run into those funding problems. And so, and then amended as needed. So that's, what were the other pieces of that, Kim?
That's it, and that
Okay.
more information to come. So there won't be a set number, but we know it'll be a very new thing for both providers and staff. And so there will be training and communication coming out in the next couple of months to help navigate that as everyone's gonna have to like shift their brain a little bit. So we'll do some work. This is the first step to kind of start shifting your brain in that way. Okay, so there's a couple here that are for me. So I'm going to steal the question and the answer. So for the E1 Minnesota listserv subscription, so I think we actually sent 3 different listserv subscriptions today. There's basically mine, which is the VRS community partnerships or community partners list, and that also includes VRS staff. So that's the one where if you registered today, you'll automatically be put on that list. If you have other staff, email Carla Eckhoff. Her information was in the slides and she will get you on that list. So that's VR specific, E1 PBA, things like that. And it can be for anything. Yesterday I emailed about contracted services and the forum, and sometimes it's about other changes going on with VRS. So that's mine. And then there it's not mine, it's all of ours, but you know what I mean. And then Alyssa has a new listserv, and Alyssa can jump in and correct me if I'm wrong, but that is specifically, actually, Alyssa, will you explain your listserv?
It's called E1MN Youth. You could think of it as the statewide transition listserv. So anything related to high school students in transition. It's for educators, providers, VRS staff, county staff, et cetera, just kind of system level transition related information.
Perfect. And then the third one, so that's all things transition. So it includes education folks too. So it's transition. Third one is the E1MN, isn't that right, Amanda? There's an E1MN coffee chat listserv, or am I wrong on that? Was there one for that?
This is Amanda. So we do not have a E1MN like adult listserv. What we've been asking, that coffee chat form is where we're asking for questions. So if you have questions about kind of broader E1MN stuff, things that might have come out of the core training, things that you are learning about in coffee chats or just visiting the website, you can submit questions through that. Any of our communications, we're using our existing stakeholder list. So when we do communication, we'll just use Kim's community provider, Gov Delivery, leveraging Alyssa's E1MNU, leveraging the DHS has their own email stakeholder list. So we don't have a central E1 listserv at this point.
Sounds good. Thanks, Amanda. So I was incorrect. So we sent you 2 listservs today. One is all things VRS, and we'll send out E1MN updates through that as well. And then one is specific to E1MN youth. So there you have it. Someone said they didn't get the email yesterday with some of these details. I'll send it again, but there's also a place on our website. Actually, maybe I'll show you that again too, because that's real handy. So we post all of our emails on the web. So here on our community partners page again, if you go to VRS News, you'll find a couple different tabs. To sign up again for this bigger listserv, you can email Carla Eckhoff. Under forums, this is where we post all the information on past forums. So here's where you can get to the presentation or the videos, and it has the dates of the upcoming forums as well. And then here, messages are, it takes a couple days to get some of them up, like we have to do a request through our communications department, but this is where they get posted. So if you're ever wondering, did I miss something, then you can come in here and see all the ones that have gone out. All right, oops. Okay, then a few more questions. These are great. When you plan to update the field staff directory, those are, that's being updated right now. I know we were working on it, and I think it's in finishing touches stages. So when were emails sent regards to the amendments? So again, just yesterday we sent saying the same information today. Like if you have those on the services on your contract, you will need to amend. And so that was the one I sent yesterday, but I can send the information again. I don't think there's been a lot of individual emails coming out from Anne, Sarah, Janine, and Jess yet to you. So it's best if you would reach out to us, but we can circle around with you too. The questions and answers will be sent out. We'll get them cleaned up and send it along. And we'll also start posting more of the E1MN information in a central location there on our community partner website as well. Let's see, we have 10 minutes left. So this one is back to E1 PBA for the communication update worksheet, which it is no longer a communication update. It is now the monthly progress report. Have we tried uploading this into Workforce One? Everything, there's like some issues with the form right now in uploading to Workforce One. So we haven't tested it yet, but we'll make sure to do so that we make sure that it is good to go for uploading into Workforce One. Someone also asked, is it required that you have to use the monthly progress report form? So Evie, do you want to take that one?
Yes, we are going to be requiring that our partners and our placement coordinators use the monthly progress report form. All the information we need is contained in there. It will eliminate us sending invoices back so that you have to complete them again. I know that a lot of you have your own like job hire report and other forms that you like to use. You can still send us those, but we're going to require that monthly progress report for those pieces.
Thanks, Evie. Question about how do we know which providers have both a 245D license and a 245D license and our VRS partner. We have, so this is mostly for VRS staff. On our internal SharePoint, we have a lookup for how to see what services are on each contract. And so we're going to use that in a way to be able to show you which ones are also have 245D. There's also a map that's coming out that DHS and VRS are working on together. And so if you as providers see any communication or emails asking for where you provide services and what services you provide, be sure to respond to that, because that's what we're using to populate right now, populate that map. Right now, it's still in testing, it's still internal, but it'll be external at some point. Okay. There's a question about job coaching authorizations and approvals. That information will come out in training. Again, more questions about what about July 1? What if someone's on a general and needs to go to an E1 PBA? We'll provide more specific information on that. And then employment plans, what happens with employment plans? So those are all good questions, more to come. We're getting down to it, folks. Okay, so our organization is both 245D licensed and we have a contract with VR. Do we need to be licensed to provide E1MN services? There is no licensure, there's no special thing for E1MN services. What VRS does on our side is we're developing more of a performance or just outcome measurement, quality assurance, looking at how things are going with our providers. And one thing that we are building into that will be, how are those services being performed? And what we're doing right now for providers coming in, for new providers, we're starting it. So we're just getting going, but the providers will need to show us that they have competency to provide those E1MN services. It's not as strict as the customized employment competency, but we need to see that you have staff and we need to see that you're able to do that. So that's what's coming down the pike on that one. Oh, could someone put the VRS community partnerships link, the external web link in the chat again?
I did.
Thank you. All right, just scrolling up. So Alyssa, tell us about, the question is there a guide somewhere that I can find what each PREAT service entails? It would help me during billing to make sure we are using the correct service and when a client has multiple services on their agreement. Boy, do we.
Yes, so I'll just show you real quick how you can find it on that PREATS page on our website. Kim, are you seeing my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so again, this is that page on the website. Maybe we'll put it in the chat again, where you can go to the PREATS page for our community partners. And if you go under this first link, it says, or this first tab, PT contract information. Right here, there's a link. It says list of PREAT service titles and definitions. And here it is. It's a lovely document. It's 2 pages and we have all the definitions on there.
Lovely. Thank you, Alyssa.
Lovely.
Let's see. Oh, Evie, will providers be required to submit a hire report for the E1 PBA?
Good question. That will be contained in the monthly progress report. So there'll be a section on employment details, and that's exactly what we need for paying out that invoice.
Oh, you segued to the next question, which is, do providers need to provide a report with each milestone as in the past?
Yeah, the monthly progress report will be actually for the first milestone of the placement plan. It will be the placement plan along with the invoice. The second milestone would be the monthly progress report with the employment information filled out. And we would have had then those monthly progress reports up to that point. The E1 milestone will be an invoice at that 120 days of service. And the third one will be that monthly progress report with the closure information filled out and all those reports up to that date. So there'll be unique kind of requirements, and we'll be coming out with more training on that.
Great, thanks, Evie. I was remiss before, I did not mention that, so I gave you the information for the VRS contract folks, community partner folks. If you work with State Services for the Blind or would like to work with State Services for the Blind, Jennifer Bielke is the person to contact at State Services for the Blind. Maybe someone can throw her email up in the chat and you can get a hold of her that way. I also want to thank a number of VRS staff and Jennifer, who worked on this E1 PBA and have worked on getting our application process refreshed and that all good to go. So that has been Holly Johnson helping facilitate that work. Chris McVeigh and Amanda Jensen-Stahl have been co-leading it with me. Sarah Sundin, Evie Wold, Marcy Jasper, Michelle Chmielewski, Maureen McAvoy, Jess Othway and Janine Oyen joined the team, Ann Paulson, and Claire Courtney and Brad Westerland. And then now we've got some new folks who are going to help in the next couple of months, including Gretchen Yankema, Mimi Schaefer, Erin Main, Megan Nelson, Heather Farmer. So thank you to all those VRS staff who have worked on these details. And for everyone, know that there's more to come. We wanted to be able to communicate as early and often as we could. So this is still early communication. So we will be getting through those details and be communicating them in the future. That is it for today. I want to say thank you to everyone for joining. What a great group. And this will again be recorded and we'll send it out via email. We'll make sure you all get that. And we look forward to touching base and keeping in close contact with you in the next couple of months. So keep an eye out for all the opportunities you have to collaborate with us, because we're really excited to see you and excited to get the feedback from you and make sure that we have a smooth rollout here. So thank you and have a great day.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to close things up. Thanks, everybody. Have a good day.